Before we begin, if you enjoy powerful emotional stories about love, loyalty, and the secrets that can change everything, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us bring you deeper, more unforgettable stories every single week. Now let's begin. The phone rang at exactly 6:07 in the evening. Daniel Harper would remember that time forever. Because sometimes life doesn't warn you before it changes. It simply interrupts. He was in the kitchen, chopping onions for dinner. The soft sizzle of garlic filled the air. The house felt normal, peaceful, predictable. The phone rang again. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. But something inside him tightened. An instinct he couldn't explain. He answered. "Is this Daniel Harper?" A calm voice asked. "Yes. This is St. Mary's Hospital. I'm calling about your wife, Claire. She collapsed at work and is being transported here." The knife slipped from his fingers. For a second, the world went silent. Collapsed. Daniel didn't remember grabbing his jacket. He didn't remember locking the door. He didn't remember the drive. Red lights blurred. His hands shook on the steering wheel. He only remembered one thought repeating over and over. Please let her be alive. The hospital lights felt harsh, cold, unforgiving. Machines beeped steadily as doctors moved around Claire's bed. She looked pale, too pale. Her lips were dry, her breathing shallow but steady. Tubes and wires surrounded her like fragile threads holding everything together. A doctor explained in a controlled voice. Severe exhaustion, high stress, and an undiagnosed heart condition. It's treatable, but she needs immediate rest and long-term recovery. Daniel swallowed hard. She's going to live, right? Yes. But she'll need months of care. Months. He stepped closer and gently took her hand. It felt cool in his. "I'm here," he whispered. Her fingers twitched faintly, and that tiny movement felt like hope. 20 minutes later, the hospital doors opened again. Margaret, Claire's mother, entered with urgency. Her coat damp from rain, her expression firm but shaken. She hugged Daniel briefly, then immediately moved to her daughter's side. She brushed Claire's hair back the way only a mother can, soft, protective, instinctive. "I'm staying," Margaret said firmly. "You both need help." Daniel didn't argue. He was exhausted, terrified, completely overwhelmed. Margaret stepped into control naturally. She spoke with doctors confidently. She took notes. She asked the right questions. She handled paperwork. For the first time that evening, Daniel felt like he wasn't drowning alone. When Claire was discharged days later, she was weak. Walking from the hospital bed to the wheelchair left her trembling. Margaret came home with them. "Only until she's stronger," she assured. The first few days felt like a blessing. Margaret cooked nourishing meals. She organized medication schedules perfectly. She cleaned the house thoroughly. She made sure Claire rested and took every pill on time. Daniel was grateful. He hadn't realized how much work illness brought with it. But slowly, something began to change. Margaret didn't ask what Daniel wanted for dinner anymore. She decided. She rearranged the living room furniture for better space. She reorganized closets. She replaced the grocery list. "This house needs structure," she would say calmly. Daniel told himself it was fine. Claire needed peace. This was her mother. But the house that once felt like a shared life slowly began to feel managed, controlled. Margaret started waking Daniel early. "Claire needs quiet. No noise after 10 p.m. She told him which bills to prioritize. She corrected how he folded laundry. She even suggested what he should wear to work. "You look more professional in this." Daniel smiled politely each time. But inside, he felt smaller. Claire slept most of the day. Recovery drained her. When she was awake, she seemed distant, lost in fatigue and discomfort. "How are you feeling?" Daniel would ask softly. "Just tired," she whispered. Margaret was always nearby, adjusting pillows, bringing water, monitoring everything. Daniel began to feel like a guest in his own marriage. One night, after Claire had fallen asleep, Daniel walked into the living room. Margaret was sitting alone in the dark. The television was off. Rain tapped softly against the windows. She was crying. Not quiet tears, but deep, trembling ones. He froze. Margaret. She quickly wiped her face but didn't deny it. I didn't mean for you to see. It's okay, Daniel said gently. What's wrong? She took a slow breath. I gave my whole life to my family, she whispered. I stayed in a marriage where I wasn't loved. I raised Claire emotionally alone. And now seeing her like this, it breaks me. Her voice cracked. I feel so alone. Daniel sat across from her. I'm scared too, he admitted. I don't know how to fix this. I feel like I'm losing her little by little. Their eyes met. And for the first time since the hospital call, Daniel felt understood. That night something shifted. Not visibly. Not loudly. But deeply. Before we continue, if this story is pulling you in, if you can feel the tension building in this quiet house, don't forget to subscribe. Stories like this remind us how fragile trust can be. And how powerful our choices are. The night the power went out, the house felt different. Not darker. Just more honest. Candles flickered across the living room walls, casting soft shadows that moved like silent witnesses. Rain poured heavily outside, tapping against the windows in steady rhythm. Claire was asleep upstairs, unaware. Daniel stood near the window, arms crossed, watching the storm. Margaret placed the last candle on the table and stood beside him. For a long moment, neither spoke. The quiet between them was no longer comfortable. It was charged. You work too hard, Margaret said softly. Daniel exhaled. I have to. No, she replied gently. You think you have to? He turned to look at her. The candlelight softened her face, removed the firmness she usually carried. In that moment she didn't look strong or controlling. She looked tired. Lonely. Sometimes, she continued, we spend our lives taking care of everyone else, and no one takes care of us. The words hit deeper than he expected. Because they were true. He hadn't felt cared for in a long time. And in that house, in the middle of fear and illness, Margaret had been the only one asking how he was doing. That's how it begins sometimes. Not with passion, but with comfort. Days passed, but the air between them had changed. They tried to avoid being alone together. But they always found themselves in the same room. In the kitchen preparing dinner. In the hallway late at night. Sitting a little closer on the couch than before. The line hadn't been crossed. But it was visible now. And both of them were standing dangerously close to it. One afternoon, Daniel came home early from work. The house was quiet. Claire was upstairs resting. Margaret was in the living room, folding laundry. She looked up when he entered. You're home early. Meeting was cancelled, he replied. There was an awkward pause. He walked further inside, then stopped. I think we need to talk. Margaret's hands froze on the towel she was folding. She knew. I don't like who I'm becoming, Daniel said honestly. And I don't like what this is starting to feel like. Silence filled the room. Margaret looked down. Her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. I never meant for this to happen. Neither did I. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with himself. I love my wife. Margaret closed her eyes briefly. I know. And she trusts us, he added quietly. That word lingered in the air. Trust. Upstairs, Claire slept peacefully. Trusting. Believing her home was safe. Margaret's voice trembled slightly. When my marriage failed, I told myself I would never be the reason another woman feels that pain. Daniel's chest tightened. Then we have to stop, he said firmly. The decision felt heavy, but clear. That evening, Daniel sat beside Claire's bed longer than usual. She looked fragile but peaceful. He took her hand again, like he had in the hospital. And this time he realized something important. Loneliness had distorted his perspective. He had been so focused on what he was missing, that he forgot what he still had. Claire wasn't distant by choice. She was fighting to heal, fighting to survive. And instead of standing stronger beside her, he had allowed himself to drift. Guilt washed over him. But guilt can either destroy you, or correct you. He chose correction. The next morning, Margaret packed her suitcase. Daniel noticed it by the door. You don't have to leave, he said gently. Yes, I do. Her tone wasn't defensive. It was resolved. Claire is getting stronger. She doesn't need me here every minute anymore. He understood what she was really saying. She stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough. You're a good man, Daniel, she said. Don't forget that. He nodded. And you're a good mother, he replied. There was sadness in the space between them, but there was also dignity. Some lines, once crossed, change everything forever. They had come close. But close was not the same as broken. Margaret picked up her suitcase. Before leaving, she went upstairs to kiss Claire on the forehead. Rest, she whispered. Then she walked out the front door. And this time, Daniel watched her leave with clarity, not confusion. Weeks passed. Claire's health slowly improved. She laughed more, spoke more, walked further each day. Daniel made a conscious effort, not dramatic, not loud, but steady. He cooked again. He sat beside her during therapy exercises. He listened more carefully. One evening, Claire looked at him thoughtfully. You've been different lately. He smiled gently. Maybe I finally realized what matters. She squeezed his hand. And for the first time in months, the house felt like theirs again. Not controlled. Not tense. Just shared. Months later, Claire was strong enough to return to work part-time. Life wasn't perfect. But it was real. And sometimes real is better than perfect. Daniel never spoke about those quiet nights with Margaret. Not because he was hiding something, but because the lesson wasn't about her. It was about him. Loneliness can tempt us. Fear can weaken us. But character is built in the moments when no one sees the choice you make. He had stood at the edge and stepped back. And sometimes, that is the difference between regret and redemption. If this story made you think, if it reminded you how fragile trust can be, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because the quiet storms are often the most dangerous ones. And the strongest people are the ones who choose not to let them win.